Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help promote the channel more. If you're going to leave a dislike, please be so kind as to comment why. That way I can review what you didn't like about the video and I can possibly make changes in future videos. Thank you. If you enjoy listening to the following story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. I know why Stonehenge was created, and it's not what you think. This fantastic story is written by Fatburner52, a wonderful author over on Reddit. I write this now as I barely hang on to my sanity. My mind is in a state of disarray with thoughts of the horror that has been unleashed onto the world. I'm writing my accounts in this journal in hopes of understanding just what I saw in that godforsaken place, and to dissuade those brave or foolish enough to go explore it. Up until now I have kept the horrors of what I saw to myself, but I can feel it getting closer and closer to me. Sometimes I feel breathing down my neck, or dream of being chased by the horrors of what I encountered in that place. Sometimes I can see the mangled faces of my loved ones reaching out to me, begging me to help them. I'm slipping into the depths of insanity even as I write this. I'm rambling, aren't I? Anyway, without further delay, this is what I saw. For anonymity purposes, all the names stated here are not the real names of the individuals. I am, or was, a relatively wealthy accountant working for a relatively big company. I won't state the company's name for fears that some will come to try and find me. I don't like to see people anymore because whenever I look at one, I just feel bad looking at their innocent, unaware faces. I feel bad that they still view the world with the veil of ignorance, unaware of the horror that lie beyond. I feel bad that they won't be prepared when everything around them, everything that they know, will end. I'm rambling again, aren't I? Sorry. Anyway, I was skilled in my job, enough so that my co-workers, who've worked for the company for years, looked at me with jealousy in their eyes. Some even tried to assert their authority as to being in the firm longer than me, but would never try to do anything bad to me as I was pretty close to my boss, who would invite me to dinner from time to time. He has such a wonderful family. His wife Mary always made the most amazing pork roast I've tasted. One could say she has the ability to impress Gordon Ramsay. And his two children, Anna and Frank, such wonderful little devils. Anna is 9, Frank is 10. Every time I would visit, they would always greet me with the warmest, cutest smiles ever. So full of innocence and wonder. God, I miss them. I feel bad that I can't visit them. I also got many women looking in my direction as well. I'm not particularly handsome, but I've been told that I hold a certain charm. I met my beautiful wife, Rose, 3 years after I joined the company. Within the first 8 years working there, we were able to afford our own house. Overall, our life was perfect, save for the $500,000 mortgage, which was really a pain in the neck as we always had to budget carefully. I wish I could still live my near-perfect life. Oh God, how I miss her. The prelude of our disaster started on March 17th, 2015. It was a typical weekday, both of us struggling to get our feet out of the covers. But despite the struggle, we knew that we had to get to work, else we risked disciplinary action. My boss liked both of us, but he did not discriminate when it came to discipline. After just barely making it to work on time, we went to our respective departments to tackle the load of papers and reports that awaited us. At around 2 p.m, our boss announced that our board of directors felt that the workers in our company weren't appreciated enough. Therefore, they decided to conduct a raffle draw, with the winner getting a 4 days and 3 nights trip to the UK, all expenses paid. In addition, they could also take another family member with them. We were told to write our names and contact information on the forms provided. After everyone put the forms in the raffle box, we were told that the draw would commence tomorrow and that we were given an early leave. Not only did we have the chance to win an all-expense-paid trip, but we were also given an early leave. Sweet, I thought. As I was packing my things and preparing to head home, I bumped into one of the board of directors, and by bump, I literally collided into her in my hurry to head home. I got up and immediately apologised to her. She was a brunette in her mid-40s named Jane, but her looks said otherwise. She looked like a model and had a smile that could turn the heads of men and women alike. There were rumours in the office that she spent a lot of money on maintaining her appearance. However, all of them lacked any concrete proof. In addition to her appearance, she was also very nice and always tried to make good relations with the employees at the company. As I got her, I apologised profusely as I helped her pick up the papers she was carrying. She said it was okay and got down to pick up her papers. As she did so, I caught a glimpse of a rather peculiar tattoo above her right breast. It looked like the footprint of a chicken. However, the tips looked like spears, not unlike the ones you would see in history museums. The symbol was surrounded by a circle. I think she saw me staring because she gave me a seductive grin as I looked up. I quickly gave her the papers, apologised once again, and immediately headed for my car, spotting my wife who was also making her way there. The next day was one of excitement. I had butterflies in my stomach, and looking at my colleagues, I knew that event they had that feeling. As the name was pulled out, we all collectively held our breath as the announcer said, "And the winner is Jack Dyer." Feeling in my stomach disappeared and was replaced by a cold sensation that travelled across my body. Everybody clapped as I stepped near the announcer and received my award. Of course, we weren't getting away with a half day again, and were told to get back to work after it was over. After work, Rose and I couldn't contain our happiness as we drove back home. We were ecstatic, planning our itinerary and talking about what we should see and that we should start packing immediately, even though the trip wasn't until next week. As I got into bed and closed my eyes, I thought about how much fun we were going to have at our getaway. I laughed about how ignorant I was at that time, and how my trip, that was supposed to be another happy memory to cherish, suddenly turned into that of a nightmare. The airport was bustling with activity. People were moving to and fro, trying to catch their flights or looking around for their loved ones to pick them up from the airport. As we boarded our plane, I spotted a rather peculiar man staring at us from the corner of my eye. When I turned to look at him, he immediately turned back to what he was doing. Back then, I thought that it was my imagination, but looking back, I'm not so sure. Though particularly obstructed, I was quite sure that it resembled the tattoo that Jane had. I had just chalked it up to being a fashion trend or something and decided to read a book. Our flight departed at 9 p.m. from the airport and we reached at exactly 5 a.m. As we were getting through immigration, I felt the gnawing feeling that I was being watched. That was when Rose asked me, "Is that guy staring at us?" I turned to look at where she was pointing and noticed that behind us, just a couple of metres away, was the man who was staring at us previously. He was a massive beast of a man, about 6'5", and looked to be of Eastern European descent. He looked to be in his mid-50s with a look in his eyes that told me that he had seen things that would make the normal man lose his sanity. A look of a war veteran. Intimidated by his gaze, I quickly turned back and told my wife that we had to get through immigration fast. A few hours later, we rushed to get a taxi in order to get to our hotel. As we were rushing, I kept on turning round to ensure that the man wasn't following us. At around 5:50 a.m, the driver pulled into the Holiday Inn in Salisbury. I know, pretty fancy, but like I said, our company was relatively big. Our room was decently big. There was a massive king-size bed that dominated the room, and a bathroom that looked like the one in my boss's mansion. Rose collapsed on the bed before we could even begin unpacking. She was tired from the trip, and so was I. As I collapsed next to her, I immediately drifted off into sleep. I was in a dark cave, illuminated only by a small light at the end. As I walked towards the light, I could hear disembodied voices all around me, telling me to stop and turn back. However, it felt as if there was some kind of force that was pulling me towards the end. As I got to the end of the cave, my stomach dropped and I was greeted by a gruesome sight. In the cave, there were people subjected to all forms of torture. They were screaming, begging their torturers, who all wore black robes with their faces concealed, to set them free. Through the screaming, I could somehow hear the torturers mutter some unintelligible words. As I walked into the cave, all the victims stopped and at once turned into my direction. Then in unison, they all started chanting, Glei Gulgol Algaroth and Fey, Glei Gulgol Asgaroth and Fey, over and over. I was horrified at what I was seeing, but what really horrified me was the sight of my wife. She was naked and bound to a pole. Her torturer had cut open her stomach and was slowly pulling her entrails out. She seemed unfazed by the whole thing as she kept on chanting. I wanted to run, but couldn't for some reason. It was like something had held my feet in place. As she chanted, her torturer stopped extracting her entrails and turned to me. Then in one swift motion, pulled their hoods back. What I saw was enough to make me run in the opposite direction. The torturer's face was covered in human eyeballs of all colours, all darting in different directions as if to guard every angle of the eldritch abomination. As I ran, I turned back and saw the abomination had caught up to me and reached its hand out to catch me. As its hand neared me, I snapped awake, gasping for air. My sudden action caused Rose to get up as well. As she did, I looked at her and embraced her in the tightest hug ever, sobbing as I did so. She hugged me back and told me that it was only a dream and that she was there for me. After 30 minutes or so of consoling me, I drifted off into sleep, still hugging her. This time I wasn't greeted with any nightmares or dreams. The next day I tried my best to forget about the nightmare as Rose and I rode the Eye of London. As the ride ascended, I looked out of the window into the streets below. It felt surreal, looking at the cars and people from above as they jostled to get to their workplaces on time. I felt so alive as I took in the beautiful sights of London. When the ride was over, we went to the Big Ben and took a lot of pictures. Then we went to a nearby McDonald's to grab a quick bite. As we made our way through, I saw the man that was looking at us at the airport in my peripheral vision. When I turned to look, however, he wasn't there. I just chalked it up to paranoia and continued to make my way through the crowd that was moving around. For the next couple of days, nothing out of the ordinary happened. We went to Buckingham Palace and even went to Scotland to see Edinburgh Castle. We both loved every bit of our vacation. However, this blissful, happy life was soon shattered by what happened on the last day of our stay. My wife and I were packing our bags ready to head for the airport. It was 11 AM and we had to reach there by 9 PM. As I was packing, Rose told me that we hadn't seen Stonehenge yet. The monument was barely 30 minutes from where we were staying. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten about it. We then decided to go there once we finished packing. At around 1 PM, we were standing in the presence of the massive, awe-inspiring structure. I had seen it in pictures and in movies, but looking at it up close made me wonder how and why the primitive man moved such large slabs of stone to make this structure. What purpose did it possess? I'm sure everyone around me felt the same way. There were thousands of people from all over the world pushing each other just to get a glimpse of the primitive structure. As we were in the process of taking pictures, I had the gnawing feeling that I was being watched. I turned to my right and at that moment my stomach fell. To my right I saw the Eastern European man staring at me with eyes of bloodlust and hate. I was paralysed with fear. I couldn't even let out a scream or signal my wife that we needed to get out and fast. Suddenly the man lunged at me and at that moment I broke out of my trance and grabbed my wife, who just noticed the man and tried to lose him in the crowd. After moving around in the crowd, keeping our distance, I spotted Jane among the crowd. I didn't know why she was there, but I didn't care. I was just happy that there was someone who could save us from the beast of a man. She noticed me as we came close to her. Just as we reached her, she pulled out 2 syringes in blinding speed and struck both of us at the same time. She moved so fast that I doubt anyone even saw her. Or maybe they did and did nothing to help us. As I lost consciousness, I heard her shouting at the man in Russian. I hit the floor hard while looking at my wife before the whole world turned black. When I awoke, it was evening. The sun had just set over the horizon and the clouds were an ominous grey. I looked around and saw that I was surrounded by the massive stones that made up the Stonehenge. I turned to my right and noticed Rose next to me regaining her consciousness. As I tried to move towards her, I noticed that I was bound by thick rope. I looked at Rose more carefully and realised that she was bound as well. "How are we doing, Jack?" I heard a feminine voice say. I turned to the front and noticed Jane, who was wearing the same black robe as the beings I saw in my dream. She was grinning menacingly. What's going on?" I asked, barely able to speak, still reeling from the effects of the drug. "Everything will be explained in due time," she said. I looked past her to see more people adorned in the same black robes, moving rocks and carving strange runes around towards the centre. Their hoods were off and I could see the entire board of directors, the Eastern European man and a few others who I didn't know. In total, I think that there were about 30 of them. After they finished, the board of directors walked up to me and Rose, who had now fully regained consciousness and was just beginning to take in what was happening. Then one of the board of directors, Simon, spoke up. "I guess we should explain," he said, flashing me an evil grin. "In the past, before man begun building civilizations, there were beings of power who ruled over the world. These beings came from planets far beyond the reach of any mortal species. Planets that exist in planes inaccessible to us. They were what we refer to now as gods. Most came to this planet to help the uncivilized native species to develop their civilizations. However, their mere forms and language drove the locals mad. Therefore, they sent prophets to pass on their knowledge. But there were those who wanted power, to rule over everything and to be superior to their brothers and sisters. Among those power-hungry gods, there was Asgaroth, the Chaos God. He was one of the most powerful among his siblings and even led a rebellion to overthrow Zaragoth, the ruler of all. After a bloody battle, Asgaroth was defeated. His followers were killed and he was contained in this very spot. He gestured to the stones around him. Of course, Asgaroth wasn't going to go down in such a pathetic way. In the course of the centuries, he recruited new followers. He explained as he showed me the side of his neck, which had the same chicken footprint tattoo. Now that the old gods have died out, Asgaroth is free to come out of his containment and take what is rightfully his. During the time he was talking, I had reached into my back pocket to retrieve my butterfly knife, which I was relieved was still there. I guess they thought I was harmless enough that they didn't need to search me. Idiots, I thought to myself as I began cutting the ropes while trying to buy time by engaging the madman in conversation. "So, when he comes back, he will take over everything?" I asked. "Yes," Simon responded. "Won't that mean that even you would be enslaved?" "Yes, we would. But Asgaroth promised us that he would make us his generals, that he would give us power beyond imagination." At that point, I knew that these people were mad, talking about gods and monsters. Just as I managed to cut the first of my bindings, Simon picked up Rose and dragged her to the makeshift altar that they had prepared. All the while she was screaming, begging them to let her go. "Let her go!" I screamed as he dragged her onto the altar. "We can't do that," Simon said. "Asgaroth demands despair and blood in order to awaken. That's why we conducted the raffle. That's why we rigged it so that you and your wife would come here and awaken the ancient god of destruction." I was reeling from this revelation as he got her to kneel down in the middle of the altar. Then everyone began chanting, "Glei Golgor, Asgaroth and Fae." Gley Golgor Asgaroth and Fae. For some reason I could actually comprehend what they were saying. They kept chanting, All hail Asgaroth, the Chaos God. All hail Asgaroth, the Chaos God. Just then Simon pulled out a knife from under his robe. Rose screamed as he brought it up to her neck. Before he slit her throat, I saw her pleading eyes look towards me. Those eyes, I'll never forget how they were pleading, begging me to save her. Simon slit her throat in one swift motion as I cut the last of my bindings and rushed towards the altar, knife in hand, ready to kill. But before I could make it halfway to the altar, the ground started shaking, causing me to fall back. It stopped after some time, but was immediately replaced with cracks on the ground, emitting an ominous red light. The massive slabs that made up the Stonehenge also started to glow the same colour as the one emitting from the cracks. The group of madmen had now started to chant louder, more faster now. Then suddenly they stopped, as Simon said in a low tone, barely a whisper, He has awoken. Just then the ground began to shake again as the cult members stepped back. In the middle of the altar, a large fissure appeared, causing the lifeless body of my wife to fall into the depths of the earth. And what crawled out of the fissure still haunts me to this day. I saw 2 paws come out of the fissure first. The paws were made up of human feet of all colour. As they pulled up the massive beast out of the fissure, my mind broke. The beast was massive, about 15 feet tall, and was made up of human and alien body parts. Its paws were made up of human and alien feet alike, connected to the body by human hands of all colour and webbed alien-looking hands, all wriggling, trying to free themselves from the beast, but to no avail. Around each of its legs were 2 pairs of spines and tendons wrapped around so tightly that the hands were bleeding profusely, blood seeping down onto the floor. It had the body structure of a lion, however. The head and tail were missing. In place of the head were eyeballs, dozens of them, alien and human alike, darting in all directions, all bloodshot. Its body was made up of human heads. They had no eyes, and all of them had a look of permanent pain and despair etched onto them. There were also heads of strange aquatic beings. They were all screaming and pleading for help in different languages, shattering the quietness of the night and replacing it with a cacophony of pain and despair. Among the heads I saw my wife. Her feeble attempt to scream for help was for naught, as from her mouth protruded a slimy green tentacle that was 50 feet long. There were 4 more heads in the same state as my wife, making the abomination have 5 tentacles in all. At that moment I think I went mad. Simon and the rest of the cult approached the eldritch god, conversing in a language long forgotten by time. Then all the screams for help stopped at once and began speaking the same language of old. The voice was enough to detract my already feeble sanity from its place. Though I didn't understand the language, I knew what it said wasn't good at all. As Simon, Jane and all the cultists had the expressions of horror and betrayal etched onto their faces. As they began to run away, they were being grabbed, but all of them by its slimy tentacles, and began to assimilate them into its being. I looked away to spare myself from the horrifying sight, and when I turned back, they were all in the same state as the other heads, begging for help. That's when Asgaroth noticed me and spoke, the voice menacing, like that of a predator who knew that it had cornered its prey. Though the language was alien, I could still make out what it said. Hello there, little one. I can see that you are filled with despair. Oh my, you would give me just the necessary power to fully break out of my confinement. Now come here and become one with me. Just then it leapt forward, trying to catch me with its immense speed. I dodged just in time and ran as fast as I could to get out of the circle. As it was almost out, one of its tentacles grabbed my ankle and pulled me down, dragging me towards it. I still had my butterfly knife in my hand and used it to slash the tentacle, cutting it cleanly. The beast screamed as I got back to my feet and ran as fast as I could. As I looked back, I could see the beast trying to get out the circle, trying to get to me. However, there was an invisible force field that was preventing it from unleashing its horrors onto our world. As I stopped to get a better look, the beast suddenly vanished into thin air. However, I could still barely make out its invisible form moving around. I ran until I came back to my hotel. As I came back, I started laughing hysterically, trying to contain myself but failing. One of the staff cautiously walked up to me and asked me whether I was alright. I looked up and saw the man. He looked so much like Simon. I knew I shouldn't have. I knew he wasn't Simon. I know this wouldn't have brought Rose back, but my heart was filled to the brim with despair and my mind was filled with insanity. I couldn't stop myself as I thrust the knife into his stomach and began cutting it open, laughing like a madman as security tried to contain me. I was put into jail for a month before the court finally deemed me insane and decided to move me back to the States. Once there, I was immediately put into a straitjacket and immediately put into a mental institution, whose name I would rather not state here. I write this now as I slowly slip into insanity. I don't know how long I've been here. Months? Years? I don't even know anymore. All I know is that I've been hearing the voice of my dead wife talking to me, prompting me to go back to that godforsaken place. I give this strong warning to anyone who wants to visit Stonehenge. Do not go there. Though you may not encounter the beast, it's still there, watching you, still concealed in its invisible form. It's getting stronger and stronger by the minute. I can feel it. It's going to break free any moment and spread its madness across the world. Oh God, I can hear the footsteps, not human, quadrupedal. It's coming for me. I can hear my dead wife again. It will not have me. I see a knife. Yes, that's it. I'll end it all right here and right now. This journal was found in Johns Hopkins Hospital on March 21st, 2017, alongside the deceased patient. Reports say that the nurses heard screaming coming from the patient's room and immediately went to check on him. The patient was found on the floor, bleeding from his wrists while chanting, "Gle Golgor Asgaroth en Fey, Gle Golgor Asgaroth en Fey," as he lost consciousness. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. And don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you'd like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. Have you written a creepypasta story you would like me to narrate? Have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters, or even had a creepy or terrifying situation you would like to share? Well, I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit your stories. The link for that is also in the thumbnail as well as below in the description. You can submit your stories there, or you can send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. Now I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit and Discord. And if you'd like to support the channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. Now I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit and Discord. And if you would like to support the channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost, and any and all donations would be gratefully received. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.